Welcome back to the next part of the tutorial series on how to make a board game in Unreal Engine. I recorded this whole thing and realized I didn't have my audio input turned on. So, about an hour of recording or whatever, and I effectively have to redo it. So, I'm going to kind of walk everybody through what I did to the point where I realized I had that issue. So might be a little bit different, but maybe this is also a little bit cleaner too. So let me know in the comments if you like this. But yeah, stupid mistake on my part. But where we left off was we kind of had the battle resolution done. So we had a dice roll for attacker and defender, and then a casualty die to determine the amount of casualties. And then the losing player could select which units to be destroyed. So if you have 3 units and there's a casualty of 1, you have to destroy 1 unit, and then the rest are going to rout. So the first thing I want you to do is open up your HUD widget, which for me is in my A main widgets HUD widget. So at the top we have this text that says like waiting for your turn, and that's binded or bound to a turn text variable, which is here. So first thing to do is create a couple of custom events. So right click, custom event, add custom event. First one, type in show CAS for casualty and create an input of an integer, which would be number of casualties, and have that pull off of that and do switch on int and add 0, 1, 2, 3. And off of your 1, grab your turn text and set that variable. Set that to choose casualties, 1 remaining. And off of your 2, choose casualties, 2 remaining. So what this will do is across the top, it'll tell the losing player what they have to do, right? Because we didn't actually have that visual feedback. It was in the battle resolution HUD, but once you hit continue, that's gone. You don't really know how many units you have to click. So that will be nice. Once you have that done, leave the 0 and 3 blank for now. Add another custom event called Army Destroyed. 3 casualties, your army is destroyed for this turn text. Right, what this means is, right, if you have 3 units on a tile and a 3 is rolled for the casualties, well, that's going to wipe out your whole army. So we can skip the step of the losing player actually having to click their units, right? Because they're all destroyed anyway. So there's no choice there for the losing player to make. They're all dead. So that's what this text will just describe to the player. And then create another custom event, rout army. So this will happen when there's 0 casualties remaining. And so now you choose a tile to route to. So if you have 3 units on a tile and you lose the battle as the defender, if a 0 is rolled, right, you don't have to pick any casualties, you just have to route. If you have 3 units on that tile and a 1 is rolled, you choose your 1 casualty, and now there'll be no casualties remaining, so you have to choose a tile to route to. And then for the attacker, if their attack failed, right, they don't have any routing decisions. They're just going to go back to the tile they were attacking from. So this will just say attack failed, units returned. Yeah. So add all of those in. And the next thing then, once you're done with that, I'll just leave this up here for a second. If you want to pause it, make sure you got that. Come into your player turn-based. So we had this event already, and this is the new event. So create a show casualty CAS HUD. Now in here, add a couple of inputs. 1 being your number of casualties, which is an integer. 2 being a Boolean, is this the attacker? And then 3 being a reference to the BP HexTile entitled defending tile. So once you have that done, let me straighten this up. Off of the number of casualties, pull off this and do switch on int. And then add 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 by just hitting this add pin. And then off your attacker, pull off this and type in not. So what this does is right? It's obviously the opposite. So if this is not the attacker, true. If it is the attacker, false. It's basically saying is this the defender, true, false. I hope that makes sense. The not part of the Boolean is just kind of confusing to me right away, but this will work as intended. So add that branch in here off the 0. And so what this is saying is if the casualties are 0, or there's no casualties, and we are not the attacker, which would be true, then we're going to rout our army, right? So effectively, what this is saying is the defending army lost. They have no more casualties to pick. Now we need to rout. And if it is not, if it's false for not the attacker, meaning it is the attacker, that'll come off this false branch. And that will mean the attack failed. Because the attacker isn't going to rout, they're just going to go back to where they attacked from. So we don't have to do the routing piece. Off of the 1 and the 2, right, both of these together, kind of go like this. Yeah. And let me just clean this up a little bit. There we go. Off of the 1 and the 2, the number of casualties, right, we'll show the casualties, which again is just going to populate this text. 1 casualty remaining, 2 casualties remaining. And then we need our number of casualties to pass through to that, right? So just connect this with that. Then lastly, 3. So if a 3 casualties rolled, right, your whole army is wiped. So we can skip really both the actual routing and casualty selection mechanic because your whole army is dead. And that gets shown in the HUD as 3 casualties, your army is destroyed. So I'll leave this up on the screen here too. If you want to just pause quick, make sure you have this matching. Then lastly, come into your game mode. And this is where we probably had the most changes, but we had some of this already. So this is our die roll casualty. So this function runs when we roll the casualty die. So we have the number of casualties, the enumeration. You should have had all this, and you should have had this as well. And you should have had this part. So if the attacker wins, run this branch. And actually, let me do one more thing quick. So within your game mode, come to your event graph. This is the only other thing that had changed other than the die roll casualties. So we're almost have everybody caught back up. So we have this attack tile event, and before we had these references to the attacking tile and the defending tile, but we didn't save them as variables. So all you need to do is right click on attacking tile, create a variable. Right click on defending tile, promote to variable. So that's where I got these from. And then from there, right, your attacking tile, this was already in here, right? The owning player index for the attacking tile. And then the defending tile, right, we're getting the owning player index and the units on the tile. So those are being used for the attacking strength and the defending strength. So I'm just going to show this. And I didn't have to change any of this, but let me slide through this quick just to make sure that you can kind of see what's going on and get yours to match. Perfect. So once you have yours set up just like this, really didn't change much. We just created these variables. Then head back to die roll casualty. So if the attacker wins, all of our defending units, we're going to loop that. And what was added in here is a branch. So we are creating our number of casualties reference here. So if our casualties are greater than 0, if that is true, we want to toggle on casualty mode for all of our units. And if it's false, we want to toggle on route mode. So if the number of casualties is 0, we don't actually have to do anything with casualties. We need to route them. And actually, I might not have had this in here. So double click your casualty mode. That'll bring you to your BP pawn unit master. And all I did is right above that, I created a custom event, toggle route mode. Right, create a promote to a variable from that, routing. And it's the same exact logic for right now. It's still going to highlight the unit, just like we did with casualties. And it's still going to put them in a selection mode, right? Which all that's doing is just lifting them up and angling a little bit. So just create this event right here. Once you have that, that is what will return off the false for this branch in the game mode. So if the number of casualties is not greater than 0, meaning it is 0, toggle on route mode and select true. And pass through the array element, which is each unit. And then on the completion of this loop, this is the show casualty HUD event we made in our player controller. So have that off the completed and grab the reference to, let me delete these. Grab the reference to the defending player controller, because this is the attacker one, so the defender has to deal with the casualties. So defender player controller, run the, right, so you can just pull off that, show cash HUD, pass through your number of casualties. This attacker variable will be false because this is the defender, and then pass through the defending tile. Okay, so once you have all that, off of the false, so the attacker wins false, that means the defender wins. It's going to be the same stuff, right? Running this loop, which you should already have for the attacking units. And then we're doing the branch if the number of casualties is greater than 0 or not. If it is, we want to toggle on casualty mode. If it is not greater than 0, meaning it is 0, we want to turn on the route mode. And on the completion, we want to show casualty HUD for the attacking player controller. Pass through the number of casualties, turn on attacker, and defending tile, pass that through. Okay, that should catch everybody up to what we're doing. And now what I want to do is work on the actual routing component. So how the routing piece of this will work is we need an indicator. So just like when you're moving units currently, right, all this pops up. I want this to happen for when you're routing. So from this defending tile is what we'll actually work this routing from. So let's go into our BP HexTile. And I want to figure out where do we have the toggle adjacent tiles. So we'll probably do something very similar to this. Let's see, find references. Where do we set this? Yeah, get adjacent tiles on the server. And the way this is working is within our tile, right? We just have this little overlap collision sphere. It's really small, but it's just big enough over the tiles, so it's going to grab all of the adjacent tiles. So we're going to get overlapping actors that are BP HexTile that are not equal to ourselves. If that is true, right, get the actor as a hex tile and add it to the array. So we're basically going to kind of mimic this same event structure with a couple more pieces of logic. So let's actually just copy all of this with the exception of this, adding to the adjacent tiles. Let's just paste that over here for now and create a custom event. And we'll just call this get routing tiles. And we want this to replicate on the server, reliable. And I'm just gonna give myself some more space. I might move this down below, but we'll just see. Okay, so what we want to do here is we still want to get everything where the collision sphere is colliding with. So this is good. We're running a loop. We still don't want to get right ourselves, so we want to exclude that. The other thing I want to do And we'll probably still have to actually cast. So we'll still have to do this cast piece. And off of this, we want to get the owning player index. And we want to check if this is equal to, right, you can't route to a tile. Well, actually, I don't think we don't need this. We need, well, let me think. Basically, when you lose, right, when you lose a battle, so let's say these guys attack here, right, and this defender loses, they can't route to this tile. And let's say that blue had a unit here as well. Just get this up. So blue attacks from here, right? This unit attacks here, wins. These guys shouldn't be able to route to here or to here, right? They can only route to a tile that they can move to, right? That isn't occupied by an enemy unit. That's how I want this to work, right? And if this guy's over here and this tile is owned by blue, these guys can still route there, right? Because there's nothing restricting them, right? There's no units there, so I think that makes sense. So that's the logic. We just got to build out a little bit. So I think what we'll do is we'll get this owning player index. We'll do a branch. Does it equal? And does it equal our owning player index? And you know what? I'm going to grab all this and just move it down below. Well, gosh, I need a lot of space, but I kind of want it by this. We'll just put it down here for now. I'm just going to drop it at the very bottom. So if the tile owns to, or is owned by ourselves, right, then that will be good. So let's create a variable and we'll call this routing tiles, routing tile array. And this will be BPA HexTile object reference, and then click on this to make it an array. And actually, one thing we want to do in the very front of every time we run this event, still want to get this reference, but clear it. So we just want to reset all of the potential routing tiles every time we do this, right? Because your routing tiles can change depending on where units are. So we want to clear it, which effectively resets it. And then we can grab it again and do add. I'll do add unique. I think that's fine. We want to pass this through. Okay. So if we own the tile, right, we can always add it. If we don't, this is where we'll have to do some checks. So if we don't own the tile, we have a variable on here if it has units. We have units on tile. So let's get that. Units on tile. And off of this array, let's grab the length. And off of that, let's do a greater than. So if the basically what this is saying is if there is more than 0 units, if that is true, we're not going to add it, right? So if there are units that don't belong to us on that tile, then we need to exclude that. So that will not be a tile we can route to. So from this true, we really don't have to do anything. From the false, so if there are not units on that tile, right? So it might belong to another player, but there's no units on there. That would be false. We can move to that. I want to do one more check. This is getting messy, so we'll do this instead. grab can be traversed. It's like mountains, water are non-traversable. So add a branch off of the false, pass this through. If it can be traversed, then we can also add that tile. So it belongs to another player. But then it doesn't have units on it and it can be traversed. We can route there. And I'm just gonna pass this through. Perfect. Okay, I think that makes good sense. And then we'll just want to toggle it. So how does this work again? Toggle on, player index is just for the color. Okay. So let's make another custom event. Toggle on routing tiles. And we want two inputs. One is a Boolean for on/off, and one is an integer for player index. And let's actually scroll up and you can copy all of this logic with the exception of the adjacent tiles, because we'll be using our routing tiles array instead. Plug this in, and plug this in, and grab our routing tile array. Okay. Think should be pretty good. And actually, what I'm going to do in a little bit of a alternative is drag this over a little bit. Let's think about this. Oh, yeah, okay. And then this routing tile array, we need to make this replicated. Right, so we're going to be setting this on the server. And so we need that replicated. So from this, in this toggle event, will be run on the owning client and reliable. Actually, I'm going to move this back. We're going to do this a little bit different. I was thinking about just having this event run this event, which that might still be the correct way to do this. It just gets a little bit hairy because this is going to take, a split second to run. So I think we'll have to do a delay, which is just kind of annoying and not the way I like to do it, but we'll do that for now. Maybe clean this up later. So slide this stuff back over. Toggle on routing tiles. What we want to do first is, and you know what? Actually, this is kind of messy, but I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. But I think actually what might save us from having to use delays, if we copy all of this, collapse to a function. I'll just call this get routing tiles function, I guess. And open this up. Let's see, can I get rid of this function piece now? Yeah, okay, get routing tiles. So this is exactly what we just did in the, as an event, but we're making it a function. And the reason I'm doing that is because we can right click, add a return node, and off of this completed, we can do the return node. So what's really nice about this is now when we come back to our event graph, we can pull in this function. Is the line of code isn't going to continue until we hit this return node, right? Because what I was worried about is this isn't going to run instantaneously, right? This is going to take some time because we're having to pull a lot of variable information, do some branches, add variables on the server, which are replicating, but it's not going to be instantaneous. And so what can then happen is this can run through this event and start doing this logic before it has even had time to calculate everything. But I think by having this as a function, it'll make it so it doesn't move on to here until the return node. And the return node, right, is after we run all of these loops. So I think this should work how we want. And turn on, okay. And I'm just gonna move this up. And what the heck is this? Get routing tiles. Just a duplicate. Okay. So that should be good. So let's go back to our PC turn-based. And so when we route the army, I'm going to come off our defending tiles and do toggle on routing tiles. Bring that over here and check that to on. Just going to add some reroute nodes. Try to make this look a little bit cleaner. Okay. Let's bring this down like that. Okay. And player index, we can grab that from here. Boom. Okay, that should be good. So next, let's think about this attack failed. So if the attack failed, maybe we'll just make a custom event in here to handle that. Custom event, attack failed. Let's run this on the server and reliable. And let's fix up some of our naming conventions, right? The show casualty HUD, let's just add an underscore client. And on this attack failed, just add a underscore server. I like to do that. I mean, obviously you can see it with executes on server, executes on client, but I think that just helps keep things a little bit more organized. So when the attack fails, we're going to grab our selected unit array and do a for each loop. And unselect server. So when this unit gets unselected, this gets turned off. Unit is unselected from the player controller, which will remove them from the selected unit array. So that's good. And then it will reset their position. Okay. Where was that? It's down here. Okay, so I think that's good. The other thing we could look to do too, let me look at our game mode. I think we have this logic built out, like cycle terms. Yeah, so if you lose the attack, that will, well, it'll end your turn, but I'm just going to wait because we'll actually do this on like casualty and routing resolution. Well, actually, the attacker would be the only one that has the, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so let's grab our GM turn-based reference, so our reference to our game mode. And we'll do cycle turns and plug that into the completed. So this is right, if you're the attacker and you fail an attack, your units will just return to the tile they're coming from, right, because they didn't succeed. And then we'll cycle the turns. So then this will just switch whose turn it is, which we're not really using this logic yet, but it'll be really easy to implement. And we can at least kind of get ahead of it a little bit here. last thing we have to do is we have the logic built out for, well, maybe this army destroyed. So maybe do another custom event in here. Army destroyed. Selected unit array. I'm trying to remember, let's go into our pawn. So when we select the unit and it's a casualty, remove unit, casualty server, destroy the unit. Straighten this up. So when this happens, it's being removed from the tile. So I think what we'll do, basically we want to run this piece of information. Let's drag this up. Let's just make an event here. So custom event unit destroyed server. And make this run on the server, reliable. Let's just drop that right into here. Because this is the exact information we want to run, so I think this should be fine. So I'm back in our player controller. I'm going to do a for each loop. And off of the array element, unit destroyed, destroy unit. The one we just created? No. Unit destroyed server. Destroy unit server. We should name this something else. We'll call this army. Army destroyed. Even though it's running singular, this is fine. Army destroyed. So of the array element, army destroyed. Cell run for each unit in the selected unit array, which is the army that we're either attacking or defending with. And we want this to be a server event. Server, reliable. Put that in. So we'll remove it from the tile and then destroy the unit. Perfect. Okay. And then off of the complete, let's grab our selected unit array and clear it. Cool. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is kind of deal with these, with the casualties. So I want to think what the best way to do this is. I think we probably want to set this as a variable. So yeah, let's do that. Promote to a variable, number of casualties. Pass that through. Because, right, if this is, you know, a multiple number, you know, let's say you have 3 units on a tile and we roll a 2, you have to select one unit and then the second unit, but you don't have to select a third. So we just have to do some sort of logic where when you select one unit, right, they're destroyed, and then the game knows that you have to select one more unit because it was 2. You already picked one. Now there's only 1 left. And then after you pick that one, there's 0 left, and then you go to routing, which we have all this set up to do. I think we just need another event where we can actually kind of work that logic. And on this number of casualties, let's just make this reliable. I don't know if we necessarily need it reliable, but or replicated from the server to the client, but let's just do it anyways. So I think what I'm going to do is give myself a little bit more space here to the right. Make another custom event. Just do check cache remaining. Again, server reliable. And actually, instead of check, we'll do deduct. Deduct cache remaining. And so this is going to run every time we choose a casualty. So we'll get our number of casualties, do a minus 1, and then we'll set this again. So if this was 2, we select the unit to pick as a casualty. It'll then -1, and now we have 1 casualty to pick remaining. And after we do that, we'll just run this event again, show cache HUD. Oh, and this won't work because this is running on the client, not the server. Okay, so what we're going to do instead here, actually, right, if you're not overly familiar with how replication works, variables need to be set on the server to replicate to the client. You can't replicate from the client to the server. It's a one-way highway as far as replication goes. So because this is running on the client, because it's a widget event, is effectively what this is, we can't actually get this information that we're setting on the client side to the server. So we need to set this variable somewhere on the server, which we don't currently have the logic built out. So I'm going to drag this over to the right. I'm going to make another custom event. Set num of cas server, and have this replicate on the server and reliable. Plug this in and pass this through. We'll build this from our game mode. And then it's deduct casualty remaining. This is still going to show cache HUD client, and let's just add in server there. Show cache HUD client. And how on the heck are we going to get this information again? I don't want to set all of these variables. Our game mode already has it. Let me think on this just for a second. I'm going to do this to the game mode because the game mode already has all this logic. So go to your game mode, create a new function. Just do check cache remaining. And all we want to do here is get our game mode, get cache, there's, is it check cache remaining. So I think the two things we want to pass through here is ourselves as the player controller, and then the number of casualties. So let's come back into here. So we have this function, we haven't done anything. It's had 2 inputs. One being a PC turn-based object reference. So let's call that PC. Then the other to be an integer number of cache. And actually, I'm going to put the casualties up top because as soon as this passes through, we'll set this, right? Set the number of casualties. So if it was 2, we chose 1 casualty, right? We're doing that logic here. It'll pass through so the game mode knows there's one remaining. And then what we want to do is, does this player controller equal the attacking player controller? This is going to be pretty similar to our die roll casualty, some of that logic. If that's true, then we want to run this event, show cache HUD. Show cache HUD client. Pull this through. Right, so if the player controller equals the attacking player controller, right, attacker true. And let's pass this through. And then grab our defending tile, pass that through. If this is false, that means it is the defender, not the attacker. So we can uncheck this. Grab this and pass this through, and this through. So then we can get all the information, and it will rerun this. And that should be pretty good. So now, okay, the set number of casualty server. Let's go back to our game mode, and on our dice roll, so we're gonna have to do this twice, but if we're toggling on, actually, so we'll do that in front of here. So I'm just gonna add a little reroute node. Pull this over, grab our defender PC again, set number of cache, and connect that here. So I'm connecting this in our die roll casualty prior to us doing the show casualty HUD event. Oh wait, shoot, I don't want to do this as a variable. We want that function. I'll set, yeah, call function, set number of cache server. And we can grab this variable, pass it through. Then we have to do the same thing for our attacker. Slide all of this over. Copy and paste this down here. And instead of our defending player controller, let's grab our attacking and pass that through. Okay, and then one more step of logic here within our BP pawn unit master. So when we click on a unit and it is a casualty, we just need to add in this deduct casualty remaining logic. Oh, and one thing in here I forgot to do, right? Plug in your number of casualties and plug in your player controller. So I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to drag this stuff over, see a little bit more space. So prior to this delay, get the owning player controller, and we'll run this event, deduct casualties remaining. Okay, let's test this out. I think the logic is good. Let's have to see. So let's just do straight up attack here. Come in, attack, begin the battle. Okay, so the attackers should win this. Attackers win. Comes the die roll. One casualty. So we'll continue with the attacker. And the defender, you lose resolve casualties. One casualty. Continue. This text up here looks good. Choose a casualty. So we'll choose this guy. He's dead. 0 casualties remain. Choose a tile or out 2. And this is perfect, right? Can't move it in the mountains. Can't move it in this tile. There's enemy units there. But you can move into either of these. And we haven't built out this logic yet. Um, but that worked as intended. I want to test a couple more things here. So one, I'm going to move this footman to here, and I'm going to move this spearman. So I'm going to move that on my client, move him over here. So now let's attack with the swordsman versus this footman. Okay, the attacker wins again. And so when I'm checking here, 0 casualties. Oh, it was a 1. Shoot. Okay, he's dead, but it's still showing the routing. Okay, so that's fine. So what I'm checking here, right, is we can't move to this tile because there's a unit there. So this logic seems to be working as intended. And the last thing I just want to check here quick too is when the attacker loses. So let's just attack with this footman. Comes in, attacks, get battle. Defender wins. Client has nothing to worry about, and the attacker has to choose a casualty. Attack failed. Units returned. Okay. So I think that's a good place to leave it for now. Got a lot of good logic done. The routing. So got to finish routing in the next video, which the actual movement component for the defender. And then the attacker. And actually, I don't think the. Let me think here. I don't think the attacks cycled like we wanted them to. Attack failed. Oh, because I never plugged in this event. So, all right, I'm going to do one more test. And we do need this piece built in. But this attack failed server. So let's run attack failed server. Plug that in. All right, let's try this one more time. Because it didn't cycle the turns like I expected it to, but it's because we didn't have it hooked up. So let's try this again. Footman, attack, begin. Defender wins. Yeah, so we just got some more logic to figure out because this isn't running yet, right? Because we rolled a 2. So we have to add some logic in here, right? A 2, when you're only attacking with 1, right, should really default to this army destroyed, which from army destroyed, we'll have to run some logic. So yeah, we'll pick this up in the next one, kind of clean this up, because what's happening is we're not getting into this. Shoot, I'm just gonna do one more thing here quick. I'm just gonna make this number of casualties 0. Like this. Just for testing purposes, just to make sure that we actually have this set up, and we'll have to build some better logic. But footman, attack, again. Defender wins because defender wins a tie. Continue. Okay, so worked, but it's just kind of broken, right? So the cycles, the turn cycled, right? Now it's this guy's turn. This guy's waiting for his turn. But this unit didn't successfully deselect. Yeah, this is kind of messy. And these tiles didn't go away. So I'm going to plug this back in. So yeah, I'll work on this in the next video. But yeah, thanks for watching. Again, too, I did create a Discord. I'll link it down below. But I thought that'd be a good place for if you're running into issues to ask me questions there on the tutorial. Or you can provide screenshots and things like that. So I thought that would be good. So feel free to join that and ask questions. Thanks. Bye.